Plants. They are a fundamental part of life on Earth, whether in rainforests, in arid regions, or in the underwater world. Plants are also essential to life in cities. How can we give them more space on this planet, even in places where they are difficult to grow? That's our topic today on Eco India. Hello and welcome. I'm Sanuta Raghu. First, we head to Rajasthan. The western region of this Indian state is struggling with massive droughts. The process of desertification continues. A rewilding project wants to fight against this. With a specific planting technique and native tree species, they want to revive an organic, biodiverse ecosystem there, with positive effects for the locals who will benefit from the forest produce.
This is Jodhpur, dubbed the Sun City of the state of Rajasthan. The land just outside is known as Marubhumi. In Sanskrit, that means the land of the dead. But here in the village of Sangasani, a young couple is transforming the arid landscape into a forested area.
So if we call forest, everyone imagines like it's all green, it should be like that, it should be green wall kind of thing. And that's not how the forest exists here. So the potential natural vegetation of this space was mostly grasslands and shrublands and thorny bushes. We wanted it to be like when people take the name of it, it should generate a certain image in their head. And that's why we called it Maruvan, like the forest of the desert. It won't be green, it's mostly brown, it's white and different distinct, and it's very scattered canopy forest.
In the 1930s, the Maharaja of Jodhpur scattered seeds of a drought-resistant Mexican plant across his desert kingdom. That greened large swathes of land, but also displaced native plants which had grown here for millions of years. In 2018, the social enterprise Afforest sent their in-house tree expert and his life and work partner to Rajasthan. Gaurav and Varsha Gurjar's brief to rewild this corner of the Thar Desert. Their first challenge was to get rid of the invasive plant species introduced by the Maharaja.
As soon as we removed it, there was a specific species of grass that came. People call it dabda here. And as soon as that species of grass came, we saw weaver birds coming. So you'll see the nest here right in front of me. There's a whole bunch of colony of weaver birds that come here. And weaver birds make their nests only using that grass. So just by removal of non-native species, the ecosystem started to bounce back. It started to come back.
The next step was to make the topsoil more resilient. With the invasive plant gone, it was necessary to plant local species that could help against seasonal flooding.
This is a floodplain area because floods are natural phenomena and they have been keep happening for millions of years and they will be keep happening for coming millions of years. But the counter to them in the ecosystem or the landscape were these species like bear and care. It's a very, very deep-rooted species which would hold the soil. It wouldn't allow the liquefaction of the entire landscape.
Maruvan is located in the middle of two saline desert rivers, Mithadi and Luni, neither of which could be used to cultivate a desert forest. The conservationists needed to create a reliable water resource. The region receives around 300 millimeters of monsoon rains every year. The Gurjars decided to harvest that precipitation and dug up ponds next to the new forest to help keep the soil hydrated.
So this is the pond that we created, and so it was in a way that we wanted to have a network of ponds and canals on this entire land so we don't have to depend on irrigation. Suppose if you see this pond here, the moisture level would be reaching till here. So if we are able to create these kinds of ponds on our site, we would be having several moisture zones, and based on that vegetation we would also be planting, and some of the vegetation would also come on their own based on this moisture levels.
Over a span of 4 years, Afforest has regenerated nearly 40 native plant species in this desert ecosystem by adapting the popular Miyawaki method, a rewilding technique that was invented by the Japanese botanist Akira Miyawaki.
What Dr. Miyawaki says is to bring back the potential natural vegetation of that area. And the potential natural vegetation of this area is 70% grasses and 30% shrubs. So it's not like if you see a Miyawaki forest in southern region or central India, it would look same here. So the trees or the communities that we have planted, it's like a cluster. So it will be just one tree. Around that there will be 10 to 15 shrubs. Around that there will be 20 to 25 grasses and other seedlings that we'll be planting.
Another key pillar of the project has been its focus on forging a connection between locals and the new forest. For instance, by reviving a defunct well inside the area designated for rewilding and sharing its water with villagers. When locals discovered the project had benefits for them, it brought them on board.
After plastering the well with limestone, we realized the limestone helps with the filtration of the water and keeps it clean. It also helps keep termites and insects at bay. The limestone helps distill the water from the ground level as well, as we have created a layer of limestone right above the bottom of the well for the water to seep through.
The Gurjars have succeeded in recruiting the villagers as guardians of the fast-spreading forest. They've trained groups of women to spot the difference between invasive and native species, so that they can play an active role in ensuring the project's success.
We never thought about collecting seeds because we didn't know what they could be used for. But now that we have been trained how to identify and gather the right seeds and to store them properly, they can be used for this forest.
Here, the women are creating a gathering place for villagers in the forest. It is being prepared as per tradition by applying cow dung and clay, materials that, when doused with water, create a comfortable temperature in the desert heat. As training coordinator, Varsha Gurjar has also launched initiatives that use local materials in creative ways to promote local arts and craft skills.
I think living in a desert is a kind of art. The art is to use minimum resources and have maximum output. And I have learned from the locals here how we can live happily and be self-sustained, even in an environment like this.
Maruvan is an example of how degraded ecosystems can be revived through a holistic approach that brings water, soil, vegetation, wildlife, and people into the equation. As it takes root, the forest is already valued by the local community, which cares for this ecosystem as if it were its very own land.
As one result of climate change, we're seeing a global decline in biodiversity. Also, in industrialized countries, the number of different plant species is decreasing. How can we stop this process, especially in urban areas? In Germany, scientists are investigating how the cultivation of native plants in cities could contribute to biodiversity.
What are two biologists doing in a garden center when they don't even have gardens? They are looking for what's on offer for gardens and balconies. Josann Sieger and Ingmar Staude are on a mission to save native plant species.
The idea of our concept is that we want to harness the enormous potential of the millions of green areas that we have in Germany and other countries like Germany. So we have gardens, allotments, sidewalks, balconies. It's all spaces where there are people living intimately with these spaces, where people are interested in planting things in these spaces. And what we want to do is redirect those efforts towards native plants that are threatened, at risk of declining, or already are declining.
If mostly native plants were cultivated in urban areas around the world, it could help to slow the decline of biodiversity. But why is the focus on native plants so important?
Currently, we count 13,000 non-native plants, and the entire plant diversity is 370,000 plants. So if we only support neophytes, so the non-native plants, then we only support a small fraction. And these plants already manage very well to disperse, so they are not at risk, whereas many native plants are at risk.
In Germany, around 30% of native plants are endangered. Landscape architect Claudia Felgenträger works with trees, shrubs and flowers. In her experience, customers don't usually ask for native or exotic plants. They just want hardy plants that are resistant to disease and easy to care for. And what does she prefer to plant?
Of course, we make our selections based very much on the design, depending on what people want. So first, we look at what people want. Then we look at the location, because they are all really different. Then we choose the right plants. For example, that can tolerate shade or slopes, or species that are able to cope with less water.
It boils down to a mix of native and non-native plants. When people do ask about native plants, they usually mean plants that will support insects and birds, says Claudia Felgenträger. And here in the garden center there are a lot of insects. But are pollinators more attracted to exotic or native plants?
I can't really say. What we see here is that insects like going to non-native plants, because sometimes these plants fill the gap when native plants are taking a break. The concept that probably makes most sense is having both variants, so native species supplemented by non-native ones.
Robert Klesser works in the Leipzig Natural History Museum. He is a specialist on invertebrates, which includes insects. The museum has around 300,000 in its collection. Does he think non-native plants are a problem for native insects?
It's not a problem when a new species appears. The question is always how they fit into an existing ecosystem. And that is very difficult to predict in advance. Because in a new ecosystem, they encounter many species of animals and plants that they are not prepared for. So we don't know if there will be negative or positive impacts, or no impact at all.
And what about wild bees?
That depends on how good they are at dealing with changing flora. Of course, there are generalists among wild bees. For example, many bumblebees can use a wide variety of plants for food, but there are also many bees and bumblebees that cannot. They depend on a small number of plants. And when those plants disappear, so do the bees.
Philip Drosky is also a biologist, and he too is concerned about protecting biodiversity. What looks like a garden where nature has been left to its own devices, it's actually the result of gardening that emulates nature. But are the plants here primarily native species like Ingmar Staude and Josiane Sieger want?
So the non-native plants we have here are mainly crops. For example, we have Sichuan pepper, which can be used as a spice. We also have fig trees, and we harvest the fruit. Our native plants are primarily for the animals. So like these wild areas here by the pond. But of course, there are also native plants that we use, like mint.
The mix of native and non-native plants seems to work well for many animals, like these dragonflies, bees and lizards. A natural garden has many advantages, but it is a lot of work. And gardeners need to be knowledgeable about the plants. Ingmar Staude and Josiane Sieger like the natural garden. But does it live up to their idea of a garden that supports native plants and ecosystems?
I think the best ratio is probably to have between 10 to 20% non-natives, neophytes, and the rest 80 to 90% native plant species. And especially for the neophytes, it would be desirable that they kind of fit into our ecosystems as well, so that insect pollinators recognize these species.
There's still one big sticking point. According to researchers, people's perception of what constitutes a beautiful garden needs to change. But maybe it's helpful to know that a garden with such a mix of plants could better survive climate change.
Now, to grow plants, you need space. But that's not available everywhere in cities. The cultivation of microgreens could be a good alternative, farming in your own home. And these vegetable seedlings are also a very healthy source of food. We took a look around Chennai and met some people following this trend.
56-year-old Vidyadharan lives in a residential neighborhood of Chennai. Even though he spent most of his life working with NGOs in the education sector, he always wanted to be a farmer.
Agriculture is my passion. I did have a farm once, but it wasn't profitable.
High investments and costs in running his farm outside Chennai meant he had to quit farming. But he was still unwilling to give up on his dream. During his research on alternative farming methods, he came across microgreens. Microgreens are young, edible seedlings that are grown and harvested within a month of germination. Packed with nutrients, they are touted as a tasty superfood that can be easily cultivated in restrictive environments. NASA has been testing ways to grow microgreens in space flight to give astronauts a nutritional boost on long exploration missions. Microgreens have been a popular salad topping in the United States and other countries for decades, and are now increasingly finding their way onto restaurant menus in Indian cities too.
We have many varieties of radish, red, white, and pink, and sunflower, pea shoot, broccoli, cabbage, red amaranthus. Like these, we cultivate 12 types of microgreens.
All of these he grows in his greenhouse and on the family balcony, in an area no larger than 10 square meters. He is assisted in his work by his wife and daughter. The three of them are able to handle the whole process, from sowing to delivery.
The advantage in this is that in a small place I can grow huge quantities. The initial investment is less than 100,000 rupees and profits are good. I can get 40 to 50,000 rupees per month on average.
40 to 50,000 per month.
India's agriculture sector is under pressure from low yields, disappearing water resources and ecological damage, something Vidyadharan experienced firsthand in his earlier farming ventures. On the other hand, growing microgreens is straightforward and sustainable. To begin with, the planting trays are filled with vermicompost. Then seeds are sown in the soil in dense rows. This is followed by spraying some water to start the germination process. The trays are kept in the dark for a couple of days. Then they are exposed to sunlight from the third day onwards.
7 to 8 days.
It will grow to this height in 7 to 8 days. Then, depending on the orders we get, we harvest them.
Because microgreens can be grown in most places under the Indian sun, they have the potential to supplement both the income of growers and the nutritional needs of a growing population. Vidyadharan delivers his fresh microgreens to high-end restaurants and individual consumers. Demand is picking up, offering the potential for new business opportunities not just in Chennai but across the country.
From growing small seedlings to urban gardening in Germany's capital, many people in Berlin really appreciate being able to grow and harvest their own plants within the city, and to share knowledge with others about plants as well. Children also learn a lot about this as part of the environmental education in schools, even in the cold season.
How is the school vegetable patch doing after last night's snowfall? Cora, Hira, Max and Johannes want to find out. Just a few weeks ago, their class sowed a small crop of rye here.
Now there are already a few shoots coming out. The last time we were here, we couldn't see anything. We only just sowed the seeds.
This gardening school flanks Berlin's city highway. The plot spans around 10,000 square meters in size and gives school children the chance to discover their green thumbs. There are plenty of trees, a small vineyard, ponds, and lots of things to explore all year round.
Berlin's gardening schools are green educational spaces in the city. Some of them have been around for 100 years. The children can discover nature here and learn about the environment. But it's not just children, adults can visit too. Anyone who's interested in finding out about conservation, the environment, or just experiencing nature can come along.
Today's lesson is about conifers. The children's school is very close by. They visit every month to learn about a wide variety of topics. The gardening school is financed by the city. Though it's not open to the general public, anyone can attend its educational events. That's in contrast to this project in the city's east. It's called an intercultural community garden. We visited a few months ago at harvest time, amid old tenement buildings from the communist era. There are community beds that anyone can tend to, and individual 40 square meter plots that cost €15 a month. Chemical fertilizers and pesticides are taboo here. Tim Kegler is in charge, but he's no gardener. He's a social worker.
Intercultural gardens have a distinct concept. They're open to everyone, and they're rooted in the neighborhood. They also boost cross-cultural exchange. We cooperate closely with neighborhood institutions like refugee accommodations, the preschool next door, or the elementary school across the road.
There used to be 2 kindergartens on the site. After they were demolished, local residents fought to keep the space free for urban gardening. Today, the work is financed mainly with public funds. Salua Niazi is tending her plot. 7 years ago, the social worker fled Syria and started a new life in Berlin. For her, the garden is more than just a place to grow tomatoes. She's made friends here.
Sometimes we all come together to dance. I turn the music up loud and even do a bit of Arabic-style dancing. Then some people say we want to learn that too, but we're all old. We can't belly dance that well anymore.
There are several dozen community gardens in the city, many with an intercultural focus that serves neighborhoods in ways that go well beyond gardening. Deepthi Akarath and her husband Vipin Madhavanuni opted for a more pragmatic garden concept. The 2 software engineers from India have rented a garden on the outskirts of the city, just a few minutes by bike from their home. From April to November, they can be found harvesting their vegetable patch.
We started it during the COVID time because we couldn't do anything else and we were working from home. So this was a nice way to go out of the house and do something because we couldn't do anything else, we couldn't travel. So, and this year we also continue the same.
The owner rents out gardens in and near large cities at almost 30 locations around Germany. Farmers till the field in spring, then the transverse strips are rented out. Tenants pay around €260 per season for 45 square meters.
We did a cost-wise analysis also basically last year. We took all what are things we got, everything, and we put it in Excel and calculated the price, and we found actually this is profitable.
For the children in the gardening school, harvesting season is still months away. But thanks to the winter topic conifers, they're now experts in evergreens. And their regular visits to the garden are sure to cultivate a knowledge and appreciation of nature that they can draw on long after they leave school.
As we just saw with the school children, it's never too early to realize how important it is for our future to preserve a wide variety of plants. Strengthening biodiversity means taking action against climate change. I'll leave you with that and see you again next week. Goodbye and thanks for watching.